She said, "If you do not like my friend's rude jokes, you can just pay and leave." I said, "Thanks for the option." Then I stood up, took my car keys, and walked out of the restaurant. She thought I was joking until her friends' laughter died when they realized I had just paid for my meal only. That was the moment everything shifted inside me. The restaurant had that low hum of clinking glasses and chatter, but at our table it felt like I was sitting in a circus ring. Her friends were loud, careless with their words, throwing out cheap jokes at my expense as if I was some kind of entertainment. They mocked the way I dressed, teased the way I spoke, even joked about my job like it was beneath them. Every laugh was a jab, and every time I looked at her, expecting her to step in, she just smiled along like their cruelty was harmless fun. But this time was different. This time she turned to me with that smirk and told me flat out that if I could not handle their humor, I could just pay and leave. Like I was disposable, like I was just there to foot the bill and take their abuse in silence. I remember staring at her, my chest tightening. It was not the first time she embarrassed me in front of them, but the coldness in her voice that night, it was the final cut. Her friends roared with laughter, nudging each other, thinking she had put me in my place. I sat there for a second, letting the moment burn into my memory. I could feel the heat rising inside me, the urge to lash out, to defend myself, to throw their jokes back in their faces. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the realization that no matter what I said, she would not have my back. Maybe it was the sudden clarity that I did not owe her or her friends my dignity anymore. So I took a breath, leaned back in my chair, and said calmly, "Thanks for the option." She raised her eyebrows, clearly thinking I was bluffing, that I would sulk and stay put like I always had. But this time I did not. I pulled out my wallet, laid down cash for my meal only, and stood up. The sound of my chair scraping against the floor cut through their laughter like a knife. I picked up my car keys, slipped them into my pocket, and walked away. At first, they kept laughing, thinking I was playing along. But as I headed straight for the door without looking back, the laughter faltered. I heard the confusion in their voices, the murmurs, the shifting in their seats. My girlfriend's voice rose above the noise, half laughing, half annoyed, calling my name as if to pull me back. But I did not stop, not once. The glass doors closed behind me, shutting out their world of fake smiles and cruel jokes. For the first time in a long time, I felt light. Calm, powerful even. Because I realized something important. I did not need to fight for respect in a room where no one wanted to give it. I could simply take myself out of it. That night, my calm exit was not just about leaving dinner. It was about leaving behind the version of me that accepted humiliation for love. She gave me the option, and I took it. It wasn't the first time she disrespected me. That dinner was just the breaking point, but the truth is, her friends had been crossing lines since the beginning. They always made sly little comments about me, mocking my job, snickering at the way I dressed, even laughing at how quiet I could be in groups. They twisted my silence into weakness, when in reality I was simply trying to avoid conflict. I thought it was maturity to stay calm, but to them it was fuel for another joke. The worst part? She never defended me, not once. She would sit there smiling, sometimes even adding her own little punchline to keep the laughs going. It cut deeper than any of their insults, because it wasn't strangers humiliating me. It was my own girlfriend sitting across from me, choosing their approval over my dignity. I told myself it was harmless, that maybe she just didn't realize how much it hurt. But deep down, I knew she did. I remember one night in particular when they all joked that I was just the guy who pays for dinner. They laughed, clinking glasses, and I sat there pretending to laugh too, even though I felt my stomach twist. Later, when I asked her privately why she didn't say anything, she brushed it off with, "They don't mean it seriously. You're overthinking." But what she didn't see, or maybe didn't care about, was the way it chipped away at me, piece by piece. And still, I stayed. I kept convincing myself that she would grow out of it, that one day she'd realize I was the one standing by her side through everything. I supported her in every way I could, paying bills when she was short, helping her chase her dreams even when it meant putting mine on hold, doing the little things to make her life easier. I gave her the kind of loyalty and care I thought would be enough to outweigh the small humiliations. But the humiliations weren't small, they were constant. And the truth became harder and harder to ignore. Because it wasn't just about her friends making jokes. It was about her inviting that disrespect into our relationship again and again. By laughing with them, by allowing it, by sometimes leading it, she was showing me exactly where I stood in her life. Looking back, I realized that I wasn't just tolerating her friends. I was tolerating her choices. She chose their approval over my respect. She chose to keep me as the target of their entertainment instead of standing up for me. She chose to make me feel disposable. That dinner wasn't an isolated moment. It was the final straw. The night she told me to just pay and leave, it wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was the perfect reflection of how she'd always treated me, like I was an option, like my presence was a burden, like my worth was measured in what I could pay for, not in who I was as a man. And that's when it clicked. Her friends weren't really the problem. They were loud, sure, but they were only as bold as she allowed them to be. The problem was her. She was the one who welcomed their disrespect, who used me as the butt of the joke, who turned love into something I had to earn with silence and sacrifice. That night in the restaurant, when I finally walked out, it wasn't because of them. It was because I finally saw her clearly. The moment I stepped out of that restaurant, it was like I could finally breathe again. I didn't storm out. I didn't slam the door. I just walked, calm and deliberate, as though every step was shedding a weight I had carried for far too long. By the time I reached my car, I could still hear the faint echo of laughter inside, but it wasn't sharp anymore. It was distant, almost meaningless. Then my phone lit up. The first messages were from her, long, angry paragraphs, all in caps, accusing me of humiliating her in front of her friends. She wasn't worried about me, about how her words cut me, about how her so-called friends had mocked me for months. No, her only concern was that I had embarrassed her by walking away. She wrote things like, "How could you do that to me? You made me look like a fool." And all I could think was, "You've been making me look like a fool this entire relationship." A few seconds later, the messages from her friends started rolling in. They were more venomous, mocking me for overreacting, calling me sensitive, sending laughing emojis like schoolyard bullies. Each notification was a reminder of what I had just walked away from, a toxic cycle where my pain was entertainment. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to defend myself. I didn't reply, not one word. Instead, I sat in the driver's seat, placed my phone face down, and just let the silence of the car surround me. No chatter, no insults, no fake laughter, just silence. And in that silence, I found something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. It wasn't just about walking out of a restaurant. It was about finally standing up for myself without needing to yell, without needing to prove anything. My calm exit said more than any argument ever could. I realized something important that night. Betrayal doesn't always come in the form of cheating. Sometimes it's far quieter, far more insidious. It's in the moments when the person who claims to love you lets the world laugh at you, lets others chip away at your dignity, and then has the audacity to join in. That, too, is betrayal, and in its own way, it cuts just as deep. As I drove home, I thought about all the years I had poured into that relationship, the late nights working to make sure bills were covered, the sacrifices I made so she could chase her dreams, the patience I gave when her moods turned sharp. I realized I had been giving her a privileged life, one where she never had to question my loyalty, one where she always had someone to fall back on. And in return, she gave me ridicule. That night, I decided I wasn't going to waste another ounce of energy fighting for respect that should have been mine from the start. My revenge wouldn't be loud or petty. It wouldn't be some dramatic confrontation where I screamed out everything I had bottled up. No, my revenge would be quiet, precise, and devastating. I was going to cut her off. From my time, my effort, my love, and most importantly, from the comfortable life I had built around her. If she wanted to mock me, if she thought I was replaceable, then I would show her just how cold reality feels when the person holding everything together simply walks away. That night, sitting in my car, I wasn't broken anymore. I was free. She didn't show up the next day. She didn't show up the day after either. I thought maybe, just maybe, she was going to let her pride win and stay silent. But by the third day, I heard the knock on my door. It wasn't soft, it wasn't timid, it was frantic. When I opened it, there she was, eyes puffy, makeup smudged, wearing that expression she always put on whenever she thought she could charm her way out of trouble. She started with a laugh. "Can you believe that?" "A laugh," she said. "You know my friends were just joking, right? You really took it too seriously." Her tone was sweet, almost playful, like I was supposed to brush it off. Like I was the one being dramatic. She reached out to touch my arm, but I stepped back, cold and silent. I didn't argue with her. I didn't shout. I simply pulled out my phone, opened the gallery, and handed it to her. On the screen were screenshots of the texts she sent her friends that night. Every cruel word, every mocking message. Lines like, "He's so sensitive. Watch this. I bet he'll just sit there and take it." And worse, laughing about how I would pay the bill for everyone anyway because that's just the type of guy he is. I watched her face change as her eyes scanned those words. The smirk fell away. Her voice cracked as she tried to speak. "Wait, you saved these? You can't be serious. It was just jokes." But I didn't let her finish. I told her calmly, no, it wasn't just jokes. This is who you are when I'm not around. This is how you let them treat me. And this is how you laugh at me with them. Her excuses came pouring out, fast, desperate, tangled. She said things like, "I didn't mean it like that," or "I was just trying to fit in with them," or "You know how girls talk." But the more she tried to justify herself, the worse it sounded. Every sentence was another shovel of dirt digging her own grave. I stayed quiet through most of it, just watching her unravel. Then I told her the truth. "You told me to pay and leave. And now I am. But I'm not just paying for a meal. I'm paying my dues in this relationship, and I'm leaving everything behind." That's when the real panic hit her. She started begging, saying she didn't mean it, that she didn't want to lose me. She swore she'd cut off those friends, that she'd change, that we could go back to how things used to be. But the thing about betrayal is this: once you see someone's true face, you can't unsee it. From that day on, I started quietly taking back everything that tied us together. I removed her from my bank accounts. I canceled her access to the credit card I'd given her. I took back the car keys she used when hers broke down. One by one, I pulled back every piece of my life she had taken for granted. She wanted me to pay and leave. Well, I paid. Years of loyalty, effort, and sacrifice. And now, I was finally leaving. She thought she still had somewhere to run. After I cut her off, she went back to the only people she thought would side with her friends. The same group that used to sit across from me at dinners, cracking jokes at my expense, laughing louder every time I went quiet. She must have believed they would comfort her, that they would blame me for overreacting. But life doesn't work that way. People who thrive on mocking others are never loyal. It didn't take long before word reached me that the same friends she once defended were now laughing at her. Not with her, at her. They mocked how I had walked out. They laughed about how I only paid for myself. They joked that she couldn't even keep her man, and that all her so-called power in the relationship was nothing more than an illusion. I didn't even need to be in the room to know it was happening. That kind of cruelty was the same energy they had always carried. Now she was the target. And that was the beauty of it. I didn't have to lift a finger. I didn't have to scream or fight or make a scene. She had built her entire confidence on the approval of people who never respected her in the first place. And when she lost me, they turned on her faster than she could blink. Of course, she came back. She always came back. My phone lit up with messages, first angry, blaming me for embarrassing her, blaming me for ruining her friendships. Then the tone shifted. The texts turned soft, desperate. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. You know it was just jokes. She even showed up outside my place one night, crying, begging me to at least talk. But I stayed silent, not out of cruelty, out of choice. There was nothing left to say. Every time I looked at her, all I could hear was her voice in that restaurant telling me to just pay and leave. And that's exactly what I had done. I paid with years of loyalty, of patience, of sacrifice, and now I had left, with nothing tying me to her anymore. She didn't just lose me, she lost the respect of her friends. She lost the comfort of knowing someone would always clean up after her mistakes. She lost the illusion of control she thought she had. And me, I gained peace. Walking away didn't feel like defeat, it felt like freedom. I didn't slam doors, I didn't yell until my throat burned. I didn't curse her name or plot revenge, I just chose myself. And that choice was louder than any argument could have ever been. That's the lesson betrayal taught me. Sometimes the strongest revenge isn't in shouting, fighting, or proving yourself. Sometimes it's in the calm, quiet act of standing up, paying for your own meal, and leaving behind everything and everyone that no longer deserves a seat at your table. And that was the day I stopped being the punchline